Welcome back to Ruck and Roll, and yes, the actual squad for the Springboks, well, the starting lineup and the team that will play against Argentina, the Pumas, has been announced. And I got to say, I am pretty surprised at some of the selections. I thought they would field a totally new team, and it was quite interesting to see some players make it into the third game that's pretty much played almost all the games. So let's get into it, and we'll have a little reaction on this, and you tell me what you think in the comment section below. By the way, thanks to all of you guys that's been giving comments saying welcome back, thanks for the videos, all of that. I appreciate all the support, guys. I'm also enjoying this, being back on the screen and being able to respond to these videos. So let's get into it. So as you can see there, starting lineup, they're putting Steven Kitsoff, they're playing him again. Now this is the last game before it all starts, the warm-up games and all of that. They're announcing the actual Rugby World Cup squad on the 8th of August. So there's this game this weekend, then there's one week's rest, and then they're announcing the team. So this tells us a lot how the Springboks coaches might be thinking. I reckon they're starting to try and put final combinations together instead of still experimenting, which I think is a super positive. And I think if you go look there, you can clearly see they're kind of, I think, experimenting with a starting lineup there. I like the idea of this. I like your front three there, Steven Kitsoff, Malcolm Marx, and Frans Malherbe. I haven't seen these three start in forever. So obviously there's that risk for injuries, but I think Jock and Rusty probably feels, look, if someone gets injured, so be it. We've got enough depth. So they're pretty much fielding your best front row there, and they're probably going to be super strong in the scrums this week. And I don't personally think, when I'm looking at this team, that I think Argentina is going to struggle. Maybe they'll be in the game the first while, but man, I don't know. This is a good scrummaging team now. So yeah, probably the best three to put on the field for the Springboks. Totally, people might differ a bit, but I think probably close to the best three players to put on the field for the front back. Eben Etzebeth, no question, best in his position. And then Marvin Ari, to me, is a question mark. I'm not totally crazy about him, considering I sometimes get confused between my 4s and 5s, who plays 4 and who plays 5, but considering you've got Loot de Jager on the bench, that's a pretty good jumper. You've got the likes of RG Snyman, that is absolute danger. That guy is brilliant. And then you got someone like John Klein that they played for the first game, who played an outstanding game. He played his boots off. So with all those options, I have to question if Marvin Ori is the best, but I think they want to give him a run because he hasn't had his run really to prove himself. But with that said, let's be fair, there's some players that didn't get a run at all. So clearly they're still trying to experiment with their locks. It kind of looks like they've got a good idea who they want to play for their props, because if you look at that, it looks like a Kitsoff Marks. Well, Marks not a prop, but I mean the front back. It looks like they want to play a Kitsoff Malherbe, and then on the bench they want to have something like a Trevor Nyakane, and maybe someone like a Oxen Chair, maybe that's still injured. They might want to run, and a Vincent Koch. Obviously, how good is that guy from the bench? So they're clearly showing intent that this is their starting front back they want to play, with a Malcolm Marx starting and a Mbunambi on the bench. If they will be through the World Cup starting this team, I don't know. But it looks to me like a super good team to start with. Marvin Ori, give him a go. I understand why they're doing it, but not necessarily my first choice. But I understand why they're doing it for this game. Then we've got Marco van Staden. I'm so glad they're giving this guy another run. He played the first game against Australia. Before that, have not played that much Springboks, but I think he was outstanding. And I think, again, they're trying to settle that loose trio. They're trying to experiment to say, is this going to be our number one go-to trio for the World Cup? And there I have to agree with, 6, 7, and 8 pretty much. Marco van Staden, Peter Steph de Toey and Dwayne Vermeulen, the three they're looking to put in the starting lineup for the World Cup, which I think is it's a pretty good starting lineup. What I would say disappoint me a bit with this is, yes, I think the Springboks are becoming quite relentless in deciding who they want to play for the World Cup, because this means they've had the squad and there's guys that they haven't given a run, like a Jean-Luc Depree, which is really good. But clearly they're not going to consider this guy for the World Cup because it's pretty much the last shot that he's got to get into the team. They haven't really played him much, if even. I don't even think he played one game. So Jean-Luc Depree is pretty much out of the mix. And then obviously Kolisi will come back and naturally make it into the team, the same as a Pollard. But then you've also got guys like a Dion Fourie that didn't get a run. Very disappointing to me, because Dion Fourie could be instrumental, because he's kind of a bit of a utility player, and I know he's older, but you know, he's got some good skills on his jackeling and being a fetcher and getting to the ball quickly. So yeah, a bit disappointing there. Also, Ivan Ruas not getting another run, because but you can clearly see the Springboks are starting to want to settle the team, and I think after last week and all the feedback, I think they took in a lot of it, and it means they're listening to start finding most of their positions kind of cementing. I don't think the number 5 position's been cemented. The rest seems like it could be. I know the Springboks will say this is not the team, but I think they're trying to start looking at, the main guys in the positions. I don't think 5 and then again 9 also is not cemented yet. They're giving the young guy, Grant Williams, another run. Played for the Sharks, absolute blinding pace. If this guy makes it to the World Cup, he could be one of the stars. He's got tremendous pace. So he's the type of sniper that can be so deceiving. If he had to come in as a impact 9, excuse me, he could really make a big impact because of his pace and his sniping style around the rucks, and that kind of thing. He's very fast around there, so he's a perfect impact player. I don't think he's a starting 9, but I think we all know Faf is the starting 9 that they will play at the World Cup. But I'm liking that they're looking at Grant Williams maybe for the second option instead of something like a Quibus Reiner. Just hasn't had the form this year. And I'm also glad they're not looking at a Herschel Yankees again, going back to the same old boring picks, because Herschel Yankees has just not done that much of late in this team. So I'm quite happy to see them considering, rather considering a Grant Williams than, say, for instance, a Jaden Hendricks, because that's another guy. Jaden Hendricks has not had a run, and it clearly seems to me like the guys might not be considering not taking him to the World Cup then, because they haven't given him game time to prove himself. So they might be looking, which I kind of like, a Grant Williams and a Faf. Grant Williams, I don't know, he hasn't really proven himself in the kicking game. But maybe they want a Grant Williams to have put more pace on the game, specifically for specific games to have pace, which tells me that Rassie and Jock is thinking ahead. They're not just defaulting back to old ways, which is to me very positive to see. You can actually see the evolvement from a Rassie and Jock in the last, say, year to 2 years, how they've started looking more at the running game. You're starting to see it in their selections also, not defaulting back to 2 kicking type 9s. You actually want one fast distributor and kind of pacey 9, and then one kicking type 9. With your loose trio, your 6, 7, and 8, you want some carriers and you need some fetchers. And they're starting to mix it up well, and that's what I like about this team this week. It's a better mix for me than the previous weeks. Then Manie Libbok, I'm so glad that they're eventually now playing this guy from the start. They need to invest in Manie Libbok. He is the best number 10 after Pollard, and I'm glad they didn't go with a Elton Yankees, for instance. I really thought they were going to play him, if you watch my last video, because everything gave you that kind of inclination. Clearly they're saying you are not going to the World Cup, in my opinion. It looks more to me like then they are cementing that, and unless Manie Libbok has a terrible game, which I doubt. I think Mani Libbok is going to be your running type fly off again. And then you've got Pollard, that's more your kicking type strategical game, that you're a guy that you want to play against the All Blacks and your kind of bigger teams. And then your teams you want to run more, you want to play a Libbok, who's a very good distributor of the ball. For many that hasn't seen Mani Libbok in the Springbok jersey, my Kiwi watchers for instance, you will see, if you've watched, you have maybe not watched a lot of URC where Mani Libbok plays in. He's a great distributor of the ball, and he's a great second option for the Springboks. Then looking there, if you look at then running, giving Damian Delelindi a run, obviously they had to do that. I forgot that this guy had not actually played in the Rugby Championship, so rightfully so. It's just a disappointment to me that there's no option there of maybe a Estrazen from the bench. I still feel Estrazen would be good to be in the mix here. But they've decided to, now Estrazen and Delelindi play similar position, but they've decided to go with a Creel on 13 as an alternative to Lucanio because really Estrazen is alternative to Delelindi, and then they're using Creel as he can also be a utility back, and then as an option to kind of stand in for Lucanio So we see is on the bench, which is interesting to me again. I would have rather put Andre Estrazen on the bench, and because we know is good enough to be there. Then we've got Delelindi and Jesse Creel will be interesting again to see. Jesse Creel has battled as a centre in the last few years. He used to be really, really decent, but he's kind of lost his mojo a bit on centre, and I just don't know if he's the best centre anymore, in the midfield. I've still got my doubt about the guy. He's a good utility back. You can use him on wing. You can probably slot him in on fullback if you really have to, but so do you have Damian Willemse on the bench there you can use for that. But anyway, moving on then. Cheslin Colby and Kurtley Orange. Again, my opinion, I think they're trying to cement the best two wingers to start playing for the World Cup. And Cheslin on a 14 and Kurtley on an 11. That is definitely your best options. Both smaller guys, but we've learned in rugby now that smaller guys don't matter. There's some of the smaller guys like a Colby and an Orange tackle better than some of these bigger guys. I'm glad they're moving away from Mapimpi there, because again, to me, Mapimpi has not shown form. That means you have to be ruthless. If he hasn't shown form, I'm sorry, he shouldn't be going. So I really hope they're gonna rather look at a Kurtley Orange and a Cheslin Colby, and maybe I would say from the bench, a Moody, although I don't think they'll take Moody. But yeah, I wouldn't go with a Mapimpi in my opinion. They might take Mapimpi instead, just out of loyalty. I don't know, but that's not my first option when it comes to would I play on the bench. And interestingly enough, we've got Willie Leroux also playing again. So you've got Willie Leroux, clearly they're saying this guy's going to the World Cup, but they're not overplaying the guy a bit, Willie Leroux now playing again in this game. So you've got Frans Malherbe, I think, played 2. I think Steven Kitsoff will play 3 now consecutively, and Willie Leroux will play 3 consecutively. It's just interesting that they're playing these guys again, risking them getting injured. And there's other guys in the squad they could have given an opportunity in this game. It tells me that the Springboks still want to give themselves a shot at maybe winning this whole thing, because they might have the feeling that Australia might come out guns blazing. And who knows, on the day, I know I've got a lot of All Blacks viewers, but on the day something could happen, and it could just, gel that day for the Wallabies. They really with their backs against the walls, and we know any team with their backs against the walls how good they can play. So they might be wanting to just still make sure that their team is good enough. So if Australia wins that game, they got a shot, So I think they're going to try and win convincingly, and that's why they're still featuring a pretty solid team. So then going to the replacements, Bongi and Bunambi. Yeah, it's interesting to me that, and I like that. To me, I'm not a Dweba fan. Dweba had a run. I'm glad they bring Mbunambi in again and kind of giving us the signals that I think Dweba will not make the World Cup. And I'm quite happy about that. I would have rather said, get a Dion Fourie as a third option, because Dion you can use either as a loose forward or you can use him as a hooker as a third option. But yeah, it seems like Dion Fourie is not at all in the mix, which is interesting because he hasn't played any games, which to me is a bit of a shocker. And then Trevor Nyakane, I think it's good to bring him in. He hasn't had much game time. I'd like to see, I would have thought that he would definitely be starting, but he doesn't. Koch also coming from the bench, which is interesting that he wouldn't be starting. I would have thought it's the other way around. But maybe they're really trying to look at having the setup the way they will do it in the World Cup, as the right guys in the right positions, Then looking at Kwagga Smith, I'm glad they have him there on the bench, but it's interesting to me again, They're clearly saying we're going to invest in a Kwagga Smith on the bench, and they're saying, sorry, Jean-Luc Depree, you're not going to have opportunity. Sorry, Dion Fourie, you're not going to get your opportunity. Which, it's sad for those guys that they didn't get their run, but hey, I think the Springboks are trying to say, listen, guys, we can't accommodate everyone. It's over now. We're trying to get our final team together. For the most part, I reckon. Then RG Snyman being on the bench again, telling you clearly that they might not be looking at the likes of a Lood de Jager. Maybe they're looking at a Etsebev, Ori, and Snyman. Or they're just giving Ori a run because they have given Lood de Jager one game, so they're going to give Ori one game, and then they're going to decide which one they're going to go for. And then Faf de Klerk is naturally going to be your one of your number one scrum halves. I mean, one of the two, but I think he'll start most of the bigger games due to his experience. Lucanio Am, the same thing. I think he's just on the bench there. Interesting thing to me, again, with Faf de Klerk, why did they not go for another scrum half? Maybe give a Hendricks a chance from the bench, which clearly tells me they're not interested in taking Hendricks from what I can read here. And then also, why not bring in an Andre Esterhuizen like I've mentioned? And then I like that Damian Willemse is still there on the bench because they need to. He's definitely going to have to be in the mix. But start getting him, in the team and still in the mix. But one thing I would have done is I would have kept Willie on the bench and put Damian Willemse in. But I think maybe they want to see how it works out if they bring him in as the impact player. And then he will be pretty much playing the role of a Frans Steyn in previous World Cups, where he will be the utility back. And then I think when they look at Jesse Creel, they also think that might be another utility back. Maybe also looking at him. For me, sad if I just look, guys like a Jean-Luc Depree, didn't get a run. Thomas du Toit, I think, played a half once, but he hasn't had much of a run. To me, Jean-Luc Depree and Dion Fourie not getting a run is pretty sad, and Jaden Hendricks it's sad for those players. Personally, when I'm looking at this team, I think it is 70% to 80% what they will be taking to the World Cup. I might be wrong, but I think this is about 80% what they're looking to take to the World Cup. When I'm looking at the guys they didn't select here, John Klein could be in the mix. I think he's a better player than Marvin Ori, so he might be one of the changes. Or it could be Lood de Jager. I think they'll have to decide which one. They've got a tough one there because they've got Etsebev, they've got de Jager, they've got Ori, and they've got and obviously they've got who's the other one? How did I forget this now? John Klein. So look, I mean, I think for most people we will say, okay, it's got to be Ori that's not as good as the other three. But you have to understand there's also quotas. Now, when I'm talking about quotas, it's coloured players having to be in the Springboks team. It's part of the political drive to help the previously disadvantaged. So there's no ways we're going to get around that. So they might keep Ori in the mix. As for Andre Esterhuizen, it's another one that's interesting. I think there might be a possibility they might not look at Andre Esterhuizen because he's so specialised, and they're going to pick a and De La Linde as their specialised starters, that they might not be looking at at him. Andre Esterhuizen might be looking more at utility backs like Damian Willemse and Jesse Creel, but we will only see with time. I would have liked to see Andre Esterhuizen there. I think he's a weapon. I think he's very similar to De La Linde, very strong, and he could be great from the bench. It's not to say he's not in, but yeah, Clearly, a Jean-Luc Depree will not make it, in my opinion. I don't think a Thomas du Toit will make it because they've still got Oxton Chair coming back, which I think they're going to want to give a run. I don't think Dweba is going to make it. I don't know if they'll take a third hooker. But in my opinion, I'm not that's such a big fan. If they take him, if they've got space for a third hooker, maybe they will. But I'm not too sure about that one. The Jager, I've explained, could be in the mix. Kulisi obviously will be coming back and will be in that squad. I don't think Ivan Roos is going to get it. Ivan Roos is going to get a run in this World Cup. He's still young. Next World Cup, definitely, but I think Ivan Roos will not make it. And then they still got it tough because then they have to decide between a Van Staden, a Du Toit, a Vermeulen, and then you still got the likes of a Jasper Wiese on the bench, which I'm thinking they'll also take. And then obviously Kane and Moody to me is another question mark because they could be using some of these utility backs on wing. So they might not be taking Kane and Moody, and they might also I think they're going to go with Mapimpi as the third winger just because of experience, and they might not be taking Kane and Moody for this World Cup. And then Dion Fourie also doesn't seem to me will be at all in the mix when I'm looking at them not considering him here. I would have thought he would be a great utility to kind of use as a third option for hooker. Then they didn't have to necessarily look at a Dweba. But hey, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm thinking. It would be interesting to hear what you guys think. I would say this team is about 70 to 80% what's going to go to the World Cup. And I think they're cementing their positions already. And I don't personally not like it. It's tough for some players that they don't get opportunity earlier. Maybe in this 3-game options that they don't play some of them earlier because they always knew they'd want to, put a good team up against the All Blacks. They experimented with the Australians. I would have thought they would experiment a little bit more in this game. But clearly it seems like they want to start cementing the side and kind of finding the right guys in the right places to get the right combinations going already. Which tells me, I think now only can you say the Springboks are starting to get direction. And after this game, they're going to have a strong idea. Now, it's obvious because they're doing they're announcing it on the 8th of August. I hear you. But this team here just tells me that with this type of team, I think they kind of already wanting to cement the team and kind of we have a good idea of what they want to do, which means they having more direction, which is great. And I like the fact that they're going to more specialized players, that you have a Mani Libok that can kick to the goals and not random people like a Faf or a Cheslin Colby. I'm not particularly a fan of that. It's great to have those guys as backup, but I personally would rather prefer a specialized kicker to work at his craft to kick to goals. So, yeah, tell me what you guys think of this team, and if you agree with what I say. It doesn't really matter if you do or not. It matters more to me if you can just hit the red button here below. But anyway, whatever you do, you have a good week, and I'll probably chat to you tomorrow again. As you know, I'm bringing out a lot of videos, but I'm loving this, guys. So thanks so much. See you in the next one. Bye.